Right, so I was on to like a rainbow gradient. The gradient is the transition from one color to another, sometimes through multiple colors. CSS introduces ability to specify gradients using CSS notation, and then gradients can be applied anywhere when image may be applied. Okay, background image, border image, list style. Okay, so there are two types of gradients: linear changes from one color along a line from one edge of element to other, and radial gradients start a point and spread outwards in a circular elliptical shape. Okay. So we have linear gradients. The linear gradient notation provides the angle of the line and one or more points along the line where the pure color is positioned. Okay, color stops. Okay. And you can use you you can use color names or any of the numerical color values discussed earlier in the chapter. The angle of line is specified in degrees. Okay, you can use color names. Angle of line is specified in degrees or using the keywords. Okay, so gradients. This is important. Uh, hmm. Okay, so they may be applied anywhere where we can apply an image. Okay, you can use color names or any other numerical color value discussed earlier in the chapter. Okay, the angle of the line is specified in n degrees or using keyword. Using 0 degree, point upward, and positive angle go around clockwise. So the 90-degree point is to the right. Okay. Therefore, we want to go from yellow on top of the edge to green on the bottom angle. Set the rotation to 180 degrees. Okay. Right, so then we have banner. Okay, the keywords yellow, linear gradient. The keywords describe direction in increments of 90, to top, to right, to bottom, to left. A 180, okay, 180 degree gradient could also be, okay, to top is 0, to right is 90, to bottom is 180, and to left is 270. Right. Okay, so it could also be written as this. In this example, the gradient now goes from left to right and includes a third color orange, which appears 25% of the way across. Okay, third color, the gradient line. Okay, you can see that the placement of the color stop is indicated after a color value. Okay, 0 to 100% may be omitted. Okay. So these examples are pretty garish, and if you choose your colors and stops right, gradients are a nice way to give elements subtle shading and a 3D appearance. The button on the bottom uses a background gradient to achieve a 3D look without graphics. Okay. So we have two bottom, yellow and green. Okay, so it shifts from yellow to green, and this is midway here. From yellow to blue we get orange. Okay, so we are defining these colors here. Okay, so there are, okay, so 3D effect. All right. A button linear gradient to bottom. Then we have radial gradients. Just a second. Okay, so radial gradients, like the name says, radiate out from a point in a circle. In CSS3 spec, the radial gradient notation describes the shape circle or ellipse. Circle is the default if no shape is specified. Okay, the position of the center of the gradient follows the same syntax as this, and a size specified as a radius length or a keyword that describes a side or corner where the last color should stop. Okay. Okay, so this is, so we have center, contain, so we have center, then contained, that's contained within. Okay, this rule fills the box with a radial gradient that will be contained within the element box. Okay, so that's how you get that. Radial gradient, center, contain, yellow, green. Okay, then we are introducing vendor prefixes. Okay, here's where things get fun, and by fun, of course, I mean not much fun at all. The CSS gradient example we've seen so far use the syntax described in the CSS3 specification, but browsers began their own tinkering with gradients before the specification was fully agreed upon. For cutting edge features like gradients, it is common for browsers to start experimenting with their own solutions and implementing them in shipping browsers before the spec has been fully approved and set in stone. Okay. Okay. Right, forgetting. That's a lot like what browser makers did in the 90s that caused so many incompatibility disasters. But this time around, they've had the good sense to label their proprietary properties with vendor prefixes that clearly indicate proprietary solutions. Proprietary solutions. Okay, so what this means for designers and developers is that for some newer CSS3 features, we need to list our properties for each browser using browser prefixes to accommodate different implementations. Okay, although it means extra work and extra code, it is not a bad thing. It allows browser makers to innovate in a way that does not interfere with standard process. Okay. Getting back to gradients. Okay, have I missed? Okay. Getting back to gradients, the following examples shows the yellow to green linear gradients as it should be. Okay, WebKit, Opera, Mozilla. Oh. Mm. Hold up. Okay, getting back to gradients, the following should be written to address every modern browser with the Internet Explorer filter equivalent thrown in good for some good measure. Okay. Where CSS3 spec uses the to bottom keyword, most of others use top as WebKit uses left top left bottom. Okay. Left top left bottom. Okay. The good news is that a new standard compliant browsers emerge and older versions go away. Some properties such as text shadow that once required browser prefixes no longer do. It could be that by the time you're reading this, browser prefixes will be a quaint stopgap method from the past, and I hope that is the case, but more likely it will still be useful to be familiar with vendor prefixes and which properties require them. In upcoming chapters, whenever a property requires vendor prefixes, I will be sure to note it. Otherwise, you can assume that the standard CSS is all you need. Okay, designing gradients. We have that last code was a doozy. Vendor prefixes aside, just the task of describing gradients can be daunting. Although it is not impossible to write the code by hand, I recommend you do what I do. Use an online gradient tool. My favorite is the Ultimate CSS Gradient Generator from Colorzilla. Simply enter as many color stops as you'd like. Slide the slider around until you get the look you want. Simply, that's exactly what I did to get the example we looked at. Okay, so there we go. Finally, external style sheets. Back in chapter 11, cascading style sheet orientation, I told you that there are three ways to connect: embedded within the element, inline attribute within the element, connect style sheet to and external linked to or imported into document. In this section, we will finally get to that third option. External style sheets are by far the most powerful ways to use CSS because you can make style changes across an entire site simply by editing a single style sheet document. That is the advantage to having all style information in one place and not mixed in with the document source. First, a little bit about the style sheet document itself. An external style sheet is a plain text document with at least one style rule. It may not include any HTML tags, there's no reason to anyway. It may contain comments, but they must use a CSS comment syntax that you've seen already. Okay. The style sheet should be named with .css suffix. There are some exceptions to this rule, but you are unlikely to encounter them as beginners. Okay. Right. Then we have, there are two ways to refer to an external sheet: the link element and an import rule. Using the link element. Okay. Using the link element, the best supported method is to create a link to the CSS document using the link element in the head of the document, as shown here. You need to include two elements, link and okay. Okay, you need to include two attributes in the link elements. Defines the link document's relation. Okay, rel is relation to the current document. The value of rel is always style sheet when linking to a style sheet. href URL provides the location of the CSS file. Okay. The link element is empty, so you need to terminate it with a trailing slash. Okay. In XHTML, omit the trailing slash in HTML documents. Okay. Then we have in HTML 4.01 and the link element must include the type attribute such as text-css. The type attribute is no longer required in here. Okay. Okay, so we link what is the relation and what is the path, okay, in the head. You can include multiple link elements to different style sheets and they all apply. If there are conflicts, whichever one is listed last will override the previous setting due to the role order and the cascade. Okay. importing with an import. Alright. The other the other method for attaching an external style sheet to a document. Okay, so we here create a link. We don't define a style, right? But we use style here. Okay. Importing with an import, at the rate import. The other method for attaching an external style sheet to a document is with the import rule. The at the rate import rule is another type of rule you can add to a style sheet, either in an external style sheet document or right in the style element. Okay. As shown here. Okay. In the beginning, a relative URL is shown, but it could also be an absolute URL beginning with this. Okay. Style element. So the import rule is another type of rule you can add to a style sheet, either in external CSS style sheet document or okay. So at the rate import, then URL. Okay. In this example, a relative URL is shown, but it could also be an absolute URL. The import rule must go in the beginning of the style sheet before any selectors. Okay. You can import more than one style sheet and they will apply, but the rules, okay, precedence takes over. You can try both the link and import methods. You can note you can also apply URL without the URL notation. Okay. Again, absolute path names beginning at the root will ensure that the CSS document will always be found, but we are not on the servers, so that is highly unlikely. Okay, making an external style sheet, right? So we go here, go exercise 13.8. I think I have to copy the contents here. Okay. It is okay to use an embedded style sheet while designing a page, but it is probably best moved to an external style sheet once the design is finished, so it can be reused by multiple documents in the site. We'll do just that for Bistro. Okay. Open the latest version of bistro.html, select and cut all of the rules within the style element, but leave style tags because we'll be using them in a moment. Okay, so okay, so bistro.html, then I want to cut everything within the style elements. Okay, I have cut it. Then create a new plain ASCII text document and paste all of the rules. Make sure that no markup got in there by accident, and save this document as menustyle.css. Okay, menustyle.css, right? Menustyles.css. We paste it here. Okay. In the same directory as bistro.html document. Now in the bistro.html document, add an import, okay, within the style, but okay, we are doing within the style, and we link within the head. Okay, so we go import and URL menustyles.css, save the file and reload in the browser. Okay, I want to check what it looks right now. It should be plain, right? Plain text, then we link it, right? Okay, so within the style I go at the rate import. This is works like a function, right? Okay, import, and then we provide the URL menu styles dot css and this, right? Okay, then it should look exactly the same. Nice. Okay, then I delete the whole style element this time. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is comment it out. Let me see. Yes. Okay, then in the head we'll link it, right? Like we linked it here, title and then link style, right? Okay, so I'm within the head and I'm going to make a link, then we define relation equals style sheet, and then we define href. The location is menu styles dot css, and this should do the trick. There we go. Okay. Again, test your work by saving the document and viewing it. Okay, modular style sheets, right? Then we have, because you can compile information from multiple external style sheets, modular style sheets have become a popular technique for style management. Many developers keep styles they frequently use, such as typography treatments, layout rules, or form-related styles, in separate rules sheets, and then combine them in mix and match fashion using import rules. Again, the import rules need to go before the rules. Any selector. Okay. So we have basic typography, form inputs, navigation, and most rules. This is a good technique to keep in mind as you build experience in creating sites. You'll find that there are some solutions that just work for you, and it is nice to not have to reinvent the wheel for every new site. Modular style sheets are good type saving and organizational. Right. Device. Okay. Although modular style sheets are useful, they can be a problem for performance and caching. Okay. If you use this method, it is recommended that you compile all of the styles into a single document before delivering them to a browser. Not to worry, you don't need to do it manually. There are tools out there that will do it for you. The LESS and SAS frameworks, which will formally be introduced, are two tools that offer compiling functionality. Okay. So test yourself. Which of these area gets filled with a background color? The area behind the content, yes. Any padding around the content, yes. No. Padding, no. Padding is not. Padding is not. Area under the border, yes. The margin space around each element. Margin space, I don't think so. Oh, okay. A, B, and C, A and P, all of the above. This is not a way, and this is not a way. Okay. Okay, which of the area gets filled with the background color? I need to go check background color. Background color. Okay. In the following example, okay, the foreground color, I need the background color. Okay, background color. The background color applies to a background color to any element. Background color values, color value, name or numeric, transparent, inherit, default. A background color fills the canvas behind the element that includes the content area. Any padding, extra spaces added around the content, extending behind the border out to its outer edges. Okay, so margin, border, and outer edges. Right. Like expected, the background color fills area behind the text all the way to the border. Look closely at the gaps of the border and you see that the background color actually goes all the way to its outer edge. But that's where the background stops. If we apply a margin to this element, the background will not extend into margin. Okay, so it does not extend into margins. Okay, so area behind the content, yes. Any padding, yes. Padding is in the area under the border, yes. And margin. So we have A, B, and C. Okay, so this which of the is not a we need to specify color. This is okay, this is okay, this is okay, this is not okay. Numeric values, and this is not okay. Match the pseudo class with the elements. Okay, a link. Okay, this is the link, an element. Okay, a link with the mouse pointer over it is hover. Links that have not been visited are here, and a link that is in the process of being clicked is act. Okay, hold up. Let me just write a link with the mouse over it. Right, C, and okay, a link that is in the process of being clicked is active. So I'll write T. A links that have not been visited is A. An element that is the first child to its parent, F. An element that is highlighted and ready for input is focus, so E. And links that have already been visited is B. Okay, then we have match the following rules with their respective samples. Okay, so it don't extend to margins, just under the border and content, right? Okay, match the following rules with their respective samples shown in fig. Okay, so it is styling, background image, background repeat, no repeat, and background position is 50, center and 0%. Do I have a top? Okay, right and center. Okay, 50% is center, this is left, this is right. Okay, right and center. Ooh, okay, this okay. No repeat and right center. I say this is 3, right? Then I have repeat Y. This is easy, only one repeats Y. So fifth is this. Repeat Y. Okay, repeat X. Only repeat up to X. Right. So we have this is 2. And we have background repeat, no repeat. Okay, I think this is 1. Obviously it fills right here and it fills. Okay. Then I have 0% is above, right at the top. Okay, then we have no repeat and it is at the right in the center. Okay, so I am just left with 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm left with 2. Okay, so I am left with this. We have background repeat, no repeat, and background position is 50% and a 0%. Okay, so 50% is in the center and 0% is to the top. So what do I have? I think I'd say this is, but I have already defined right center. Body, okay, this is the background, okay, within the right and center. Okay, so right No, 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 no. This is within the paragraph. So this is within the paragraph, right? This stays within the paragraph, and uh, so right and center. Wait, wait, wait. Okay. So okay, I on the body we are good with the body. Okay, now we have background repeat within the P, and this is 50% and 0% to the top. So I think it is in the center and it is to the top. So this is 3, right? And we have right center. Okay, so this is to the 4 and this is right center. This is 6. Okay, let me check my answers. Okay, so we have A, B, and C. Quickly get to chapter 13. Um, Chapter 13, we have G, A, B, and C. Okay, this is not valid, and 100% and all are valid. Okay, so this is 589. I'll remember that. Okay, so this is valid. Okay, so with this is valid. Okay. Then 5, 321, 589, 589. Okay, so A is 5, B is 1, 321, 321. Okay, so A is 5, B is 1, 589. Okay, so I'll go with you have 514623. So I'll go 514623. 514623. 514623. So I have 5, 1, 4, 6, 2, and 3. Great. Okay, let's check this. 589. 132654. Okay, so we have 132654. Right, great. Okay, then we move on to thinking inside the box, padding, borders, and margins. Chapter 14. Okay, now in chapter 11. In chapter 11, Cascading Style Sheets Orientation, I introduced the box model as one of the fundamental concepts of CSS. According to the box model, every element in a document generates a box to which properties such as width, height, padding, borders, and margins can be applied. You probably already have a feel for how element boxes work, from adding backgrounds to elements. This chapter covers all the box related properties. Once we have covered the basics, we will be ready to move boxes around in chapter 15, floating in position. Okay. And we have we'll begin with an overview of the components of an element box, then take on the box properties from the inside out, content dimensions, padding, borders, and all. Okay. So I have the element box. As we have seen, every element in a document, both block level and inline, generates a rectangular element box. The components of an element box are diagrammed. Pay attention to the new terminology, it will be helpful. Okay, so this is content area, this is padding area, and this is the border. Okay, this is margin, outer edge, this is inner edge. Okay, so the background color only extends to the border. Okay, inner edge, this is outer edge. Okay, so content area has the inner edge and whole of the margin has the outer edge. Okay, content area. At the core of the element box is the content itself. Right. Then we have inner edges. The edges of the content area is referred to as inner edges of the element. Although inner edges are made distinct by a color, in real pages, the edge of the content area would be invisible. Okay. Padding. The padding is the area held between the content area and an optional border. Okay, padding is in the diagram. The padding area is indicated by a yellow-orange color. Okay. Border. The border is a line or stylized. The border is a line or stylized line that surrounds the elements in its padding. Borders are also optional. Okay. Margin. The margin is an optional amount of space. Margin is an optional amount of space added on the outside of the border. In the diagram, the margin is indicated with light blue shading, but in reality, margins are always transparent, allowing the background of the parent element to show through. Okay. Okay. Outside of the border, margins, outer edge. The outside edges of the margin area make up the outer edges of the element box. This is the total area the element takes up on the page, and it includes the width of the content area plus the total amount of padding of the border and margins applied to the element. The outer edge in the diagram is indicated as invisible. Okay. All elements have these box components. However, as you will see, some properties behave differently based on whether the element is block or inline. In fact, we'll see some of those differences right away as we look at box dimensions. Okay. Specifying box dimensions. By default, the width and height of a block element is calculated automatically by browser, thus the default auto value. It will be as wide as the browser window or other containing block elements and as tall as necessary to fit the content. Okay. However, you can use the width and height properties to make the content area of an element to a specific width or height. Okay. Unfortunately, setting box dimensions is not as simple as dropping those properties in your style sheet. You have to know exactly which part of the element box you are sizing. Okay. CSS3 provides two ways to specify the size of an element. The default method, introduced way back in CSS1, applies the width and height values to the content box. That means that the resulting size of the element will be the dimensions you specify plus the amount of padding and borders that you have been added to the element. Okay. The other method introduced as part of the new box sizing property in CSS3 applies the width and height values to the border box. Border box, which includes the content, okay, within the border, padding and border. Okay, so that means the resulting size of the element will be dimension specified plus amount of padding and borders that have been added, and border box which includes, okay, so this includes. With this method, the resulting visible element box, including padding and borders, will be exactly the you specify. Some find this a more intuitive method for sizing. We are going to get familiar with both methods for this section. Okay. So regardless of the method you choose, you can only specify the width and height for block level elements and non-text inline elements such as images. Okay, regardless of so we have regardless of the method you choose, you can only specify the width and height for block level elements and non-text line elements such as images. Okay, so only for the block and non-text line elements. The width and height properties do not apply to inline text, aka non-replaced elements, and will be ignored by the browser. In other words, you cannot specify an width and height for an anchor or strong element. Okay. Actually, there is a way to apply width and height properties to an inline element such as anchor by forcing them to behave as block element with display property, covered at the end of the chapter. Okay. Then we have box sizing. Values, content box or border box. Default is content box. And we have width, length measurement, percentage or automatic, that it applies to block level elements and replaced inline elements such as images, and same with this box sizing. Sizing the content box default. By default, that is, if you do not include a box sizing rule in your styles, the width and height properties applied to the content box. That is the way all current browsers interpret width and height values. But you can explicitly specify this behavior by setting box dash sizing content box. Okay, by default, that is, if you do not include, the width and height properties are applied to the content box. That is the way all current browsers interpret width and height values. But you can explicitly specify the behavior by setting this box sizing content box. In the following example and in figure 14.2, look at this. A simple box is given a width of 500 pixels and a height of 150 pixels with a 20 pixels of padding, border, and using the content box model, the width and height values are applied to content area only. Okay, the resulting width. Okay, so the resulting width. Okay, so this is width and this is height. So content area. Okay, using the only. So this is for the content only. The resulting width of the visible element box ends up being 544. Okay, so 2 for the border and 2 for the padding. That's why. Okay, the content plus 40 padding and 4 pixel. When you throw in 40 pixels of margin, the width of the entire box is 584. Okay. Knowing the resulting size of an element is critical to getting layouts to behave predictably. Okay. The border box. Okay, so we can directly specify width, height, padding, border, and margin. Then we have the border box model. The other way to specify the size of an element is to apply width and height dimensions to the entire visible box, including the padding and border. Okay. Because this is not the default browser behavior, you'll need to explicitly set border sizing border box in the style sheet. Okay. So we have box sizing, border box sizing. Let's look at the same paragraph example from the previous section and see what happens when you make it 500 pixels using the border box method. Notice as of this writing, you need to provide a WebKit and vendor prefixes to get to work in Safari Chrome. Okay, so we have maximum and minimum dimensions. CSS2 introduced properties for setting minimum and maximum heights and widths for block elements. They may be useful if you want to put limits on the size of an element. Okay. Value percentage, okay, max height, max width, min height. These properties work with block level and replaced element like images only. When the content box model is used, the value applies to the content area only. So if you apply, it will take element box larger. It will make the overall element box larger even if max width has been specified. Okay. So you have specified 500 pixels. So with the border, this will be width with the border, and this will be height with the border, right? So box sizing width and border width, and simple content box. With border box we have this, with content box we have this. Okay. Many developers find the border box model to be a more intuitive way to size elements. It is particularly helpful for specifying widths in percentages, which is a cornerstone in responsive design. For example, you can make two columns 50% wide and know that they will fit next to one another without having to mess around with adding calculated padding and border widths into the mix. In fact, some designers simply set everything in the document to use the border box model using the universal selector here. Okay. Then we have, okay, Internet Explorer 6 and 7 do not support the box sizing property at all, but there are workarounds. You can use conditional comments to serve a separate style sheet to IE version less than 8 that has alternative width for elements in question. A cleaner method is to use the box sizing polyfill script that makes a non-supporting browser mimics feature support. Okay. Then we have the Internet Explorer box model bug. Web design web okay web design old timers remember when the web design old timer remember when the border box sizing method was known as Internet Explorer bug. In 1996, the CSS1 specification described the content box model as the standard way for browsers to calculate element dimensions, but that didn't stop Microsoft from implementing their own border box element model in IE5, content box and border box, causing discrepancies that created headaches for developers for years. IE eventually switched to the standard content box model in IE6, but only when in standard modes. When documents don't start with a valid doc type declaration, IE6 still revert to Quarks mode and use the old IE border box model. A good reason to always include the doc type. Thankfully, the days are numbered for these browsers. For our detailed history, okay, so I think I will continue this the next time around. So for today, let's call it a session.